Hello, welcome to part 5 of Functional Music Theory on Guitar. And today I'm going to actually work with the capo. So the capo is already installed at 3rd fret, and this particular score is going to show you everything in the key of C at 3rd fret. I did a separate video on the C, the F, and the G chords using a capo at 3rd fret to play whether you're playing your chords in open position using no capo, because the capo, remember, replaces the nut, and I'll put that lesson at the end of this video so you can check it out. So the capo is installed at 3rd fret, and the idea is that we want to take all the chords in the key of C and play them elsewhere. So this gives you more flexibility for texturing out your song, having another guitar player play with you and creating some interesting harmonies between the two guitar parts, whether they're acoustics or electrics or a mixture of the two. They could be steel string acoustic with nylon string. There's lots of really good options that you can get into by using the capo. And of course, the flexibility of changing your timbre on your instrument to kind of change the overall sound of how the chords are produced. All right. So without further ado, let's jump into the score and we can get right into it. So I started everything out with the scale. You can see the chords are on top. We'll explain those in a second because when you throw the capo on and the chord diagrams that are corresponding, if I click on any of these chords, you can see different letters of the alphabet underneath. So, but on the fretboard diagram, being it's all capoed up at 3rd fret, I'm going to expand this a little bit bigger so you can see it even better. All right, that's even better. Cool. So you can see this is where the capo is at 3rd fret. You can see the letters that are highlighted underneath. So we're going to cover more geography on the guitar, especially on the top first string, the real thin string. We're going to play up to a high C in the scale. The scale itself is going to start on the A string at 3rd fret. Of course, that's the open string now because you take the nut and you move it up with the capo. Now it's set up here. So these are your open string names. Prior to that, we had E, A, D, G, B, and E as your open strings, right? So when the capo is installed, that all changes because now you've moved the nut up. So you've actually shortened the length of the guitar, which also affects the overall sound. Let me expand this a little bit more if I can. So everything that's labeled out here is all C major. You could play your scales if you know the spelling of the chords, which of course this particular series functions as a way of learning what the notes are in each chord and how the chord is spelled, okay? Like the notes C, E, G, you can find your arpeggios by seeing the layout of the neck here, how all the notes are placed. You can play arpeggios if you know the spelling of the arpeggio, which is basically the chord played one note at a time in succession, any order you want to play it in. So all of our scale playing is going to correspond between the open strings and 5th fret. In some cases, it just depends on the string. Like in the beginning, we have the C being played as an open string, as you can see in the tablature. Then it goes to 2nd fret for D, and then you go to 4th fret for E. Then you move off that string and you go to the open F string next, because that's where the capo is at the 3rd fret. F is the name of the note there. So if you go through the scale in order, C, D, E, F, you have a choice of playing the F at this case in the 5th fret or 6th fret area. This is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 5th fret. And you can see the dots are here too, right? So you have the 5th fret, the 7th fret, the 9th fret, and so on. So all the stuff you've noticed or have seen without using a capo, it changes now because the capo is installed. All right. So that's the layout of the fretboard. And you can always rewind back to this part of the video and hang out with the fretboard if you want to, and just jam with that, play with that, do whatever you want to it. So what I'll do is I'll just have you hear the scale first. It's not going to sound any different than what you would do without a capo, except the strings are going to sound a little different because you're playing a different fret location, and the way the strings change will affect the sound a little bit as well. Okay, so it's kind of subtle. It just depends on your ear and how sensitive your ear is to hearing these things. So, all right, I'm going to shut up now and play the scale. Here it comes. Okay, so actually I include the first chord in the mix after that, as you just heard. So that's the scale. Great place to start. And again, this gives you the, I guess, food for thought for the melody that you want to use. So you can just literally play around with the scale first, and you can hear riffs come out of that, your melodies, all these different things start to happen. Of course, these notes help spell out the chord. Okay, so that's the next section we're going to hear is the chord part. So I'm going to put that back to here if I can, and we're here. Okay, so we don't want key center. We got it. Oh, sorry. So now we have the block chords, and these are on top of the page. So I'm going to highlight one of these now. You're going to see there's different letters underneath. Okay, that's not basically the chord is the A chord shape, but the capoing part didn't catch up to the fretboard diagrams. So I haven't rectified that, but this is going to be a C chord, and you'll see probably the best bet for these chords. You can play through these and ignore the bottom, or you can play through the chord, highlight the chord. In this case, I already have the chord highlighted. You can see the notes that are being played at this location: C, G, C, E, and G. C, E, and G spell out the C chord. And if you go through the next, or in this case, not really the next, but the previous installments of this series, I go over these things. So I won't rehash it here. D minor, same thing. You can see the notes that are highlighted. D, F, and A are the notes that spell out your D minor chord here. So that's why this fretboard diagram is so nice to have. We can see everything. Click on E minor, you can see the notes, E, G, and B. Again, if you go back through the previous installments in this series, you'll be able to kind of review that portion of the chords and how they're spelled. Okay, so that's your E chord, E minor in this case, excuse me. So C, D minor, E minor. F is next. There you go. That's the notes that are highlighted. That's what spells out your chord. And if I move this over a little bit, because we're going to need the room in a second. All right, G chord is next. So we could see what's involved with that. And of course, the diagrams are on top of the page. You'll be able to see like the G chord here. It's already up there. So when I click on these diagrams, the note names aren't accurate. So, but as we highlight the chords in the score, they are accurate. Okay, because that's exactly what we're playing at these locations. A minor, there we go. Now the A minor chord, if I go on this for a second, even though we're going to ignore the bottom, because technically that's what we would have without the capo. That's what the spellings represent, are the chord shapes without using the capo. So if you were playing this at second fret, these would be the names of the notes you would have, but you want to stay in the key of C major. So when you play the capoing at third fret and you make this shape looks like an E minor bar chord. So if you know those, that's what's happening there. So we just take the shape right here. This is where the capo would be, right? And this would be the second fret after the capo, okay? Because technically when you put the capo on, those are your open strings. So when you go into that chord, that's what it looks like. Okay, and there's some funky ones here, like the E minor chord here looks a little funky, but that's where you would have it at this location. So that's what it looks like because of the spelling of the notes. So that's the deal with that. Okay, let's get rid of that. And let's see, the next to last chord is going to be the B minor 7 flat 5. Again, ignore this stuff on the bottom. That's not the spelling of that chord. All right. And we see it highlighted here in the fretboard diagram. When I click on it, where is it? There we go. All right, there it is. So you can see the notes that are highlighted. This actually is a fairly easy chord to play. We have an open string, 2 open strings, and 2 fingered notes. So we'll go over that later on. Okay. And then we're back to the C chord to finish it off. Nice resolution to the collection of chords, which I'm going to play for you right now as a playthrough. Here it is. 3, 4. It helps if it starts right at the beginning of that section. Here it is. All right. Now, if I was to put a repeat sign in here, which I think I'm going to do, I'm going to put this repeat sign right there, and I'll throw one at the end here. Let's do that. Yep, let's hear it twice through. So having the chords is, of course, the big thing because that's what we do as guitar players. We play chords. We're harmony providers for people who play melodies, like bass players, singers, other instrumentalists. like, trumpet, clarinet, all those different instruments that we can combine with guitar, right? So let me play through this part again, just so you get to hear it, be it's on repeat. Okay, so it's good to hear those sounds and, of course, the scale. So that's really the crux of everything you can actually use and play with for this particular installment in the series. So there's good stuff here to really get your fingers wrapped underneath on. So really, really nice. So let's get out of this real quick. Stop share. All right. So there's certain chords like the B minor 7 flat 5, really fancy terminology, but I like the way that particular chord resolves to hearing this top note drop down between B minor 7 chord with the flat 5 in there. And so one other way I can do that is play the B minor 7 flat 5, the G chord, and then the C chord. And that's the thing I try to encourage on all these installments is take the information that's provided and just really play with it. That's really the idea behind this series, that we want to take information that we get and function with it musically right off the bat. And the way you do that is experimentation, all the what if scenarios. What if I do this? What if I do that? What does that do? If I play the chord, then the scale, how does that work out? If I just play the scale only, what comes from that? So if I was to stick around with the beginning of the C scale, so I'm playing a certain collection of the scale, C, D, and E, but then including the open F string and the open G string. And then there, I just actually include the G, the A, B, back to the A, while playing the open D string, which would be F now because we're capoed at 3rd fret. Excuse me. So I'm getting overclamped with all this stuff. So that's the whole thing. It's like taking whatever you see and just playing with it. And that's what's cool about those fretboard diagrams that I have on every lesson, especially now with the capo. This might feel like a foreign land right here. So to have the capo set up and then seeing the letters and knowing that A, B, C, D, E, F, G are the letters in the key that we're playing in, that's the building blocks for everything, your melodies, your chords, etc. So taking that information and playing around with it literally is the thing, is like getting a certain terminology or a certain concept or a certain chord voicing, like the G chord, excuse me. So I took like the G chord shape, F chord, excuse me, and decided to move it up, which becomes a G chord with a D in the bass, or F in the bass, excuse me. That's an F chord with an F in the bass, G chord with an F in the bass, because that open D string is now called F. So, and that's the other thing too, when you have certain shapes like the C chord, and just move the fingered part of the chord up a fret, again, it's part of what if you take the certain chord you have, like the C chord, and just moving things around. You may want to stay with a certain fingering and just explore the neck, kind of keeping the C chord shape, in this location and see what that sounds like. So, but you have the foundation to play with, literally, and then you expand on that information, and then that becomes the functional part of the series. And when you catch on to that, that's the thing that really lends to creativity is, taking specifics and manipulating them. So there's a lot of rules in music theory. So when you take those rules and start to break them, like I just did, I played, this is the C chord, but I decide to move somewhere else. So even certain things, if you play certain things, that kind of jumps the ear a little bit, where it's like, oh, that sounds like. It's all just a great time. So that's what I hope for this series is that you take the information and really start to create with it, you know? So in terms of the chords, going through them all, we have the C chord here. This looks like it's a D minor chord, first off, but it looks like something else. It looks like a B minor chord if you were to have the capo removed and playing those chords normally. This B minor chord, if you leave out the high E string, the top string, that gives you a certain sound, but it's also included in the key. Or I could take the bar off and just play strings 5, 4, 3, and 2 with the left hand and not worry about getting the bar with the first finger. Not doing that. So that's the first couple of chords, the C chord, your D minor, and whatever you want to do with that. You can go to your G chord and then back to the C chord. You know, C, 1, 2, and D minor, 4, and then we have G, G, C. Whatever you want to do. It's completely up to you how you want to handle these different chord collections, and you have a whole different palette and timbre with the instrument because of the capo placement, which I mentioned in the beginning. So all these things come into account when you're trying to create something, you know. And also, if you hear a song that might sound like it's capoed at second or third fret, in this case in the key of C, that might help you with figuring out a certain part of the tune that you're listening to and you couldn't do it before. You couldn't figure out what the heck's going on in the song. So if you play around with the capo long enough in this location and within this key, that could spark some other things in your ear, not so much creatively, but maybe recreatively in your sort of search to kind of figure out what's happening in a certain song that you couldn't get to, you know, a while ago. But now this thing came up, you know, this particular installment or any of the installments I've done in this series of functional music theory on guitar that can spark your ear and go, oh yeah, oh man, that's what it was. And you go and you put it on your capo and you start playing around and you put the song back on and then things seem to match up and then you're onto something. So again, that leads your ear more and more into other things, into more like not really ear training, but being able to figure things out by ear. And that kind of really gives you a lot of space. And then if you're writing music, you could take that information and manipulate it in such a way that you have something unique to yourself that you've never written before. So there's way too many things to discuss with this type of series, but that's what I'm hoping that you actually experience yourself, is that certain things will happen from playing. And that's a good thing. So for the D minor chord, if I go back to the score real quick, the D minor chord was what I just played. E minor is a really interesting voicing. If I go back to it and get myself back here, if I can get it back here. There we go. All right, so the E minor chord is really interesting. That's an E minor chord, believe it or not, but it doesn't quite sound like the E minor chord you would play if you were playing without the capo and having the fingering here and playing all 6 strings. So this chord's kind of, I'm sorry, played in like an inversion. Sometimes with the A string thrown in. And that sounds like a major 7th chord, which is actually what it is. It's C major 7 in this location. Because I include the C note, which is the open string at 3rd fret on the A string. So that's actually, you know, I'm just messing around. That's really the whole thing, is messing around with this stuff. So C major. I'll just take like an 8th note strum pattern, for instance, and just jam 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe G chord, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I mean, I'm just jamming, nothing's in my head except just playing around. And again, I'm doing all this what if stuff, as I play, and I'm kind of doing before I get to the moment. I just, it's almost improv, and that's exactly what it is. I'm just jamming, I'm just taking the stuff that's presented and playing with it and functioning with it, strumming chords, picking notes. Those are the two right hand things you have at your disposal, or you could finger style it. So I'm just playing that. So there's a lot of good fun that can be had there. Okay, so that's again part and parcel to this whole thing, whole collection of chords. C major again, D minor, E minor, F major. I include the A string, or in this case, the C string, in the mix, which I didn't want to do. But again, that's part of the whole thing too. Whatever quote unquote mistake you make, you can use that. G chord. And then A minor would be the next one to do, right? So in this location, it's a little bit different. You're not going to see it. I'm just kind of putting it for myself. The A minor chord in this particular way of playing A minor is a little different. This looks like a regular bar chord, and that's actually exactly what it is. So that's going to be like the full-on E minor shape with the first finger put in. So that's really what this shape is based on. If you move the capo up to 5th fret and did the E minor shape, that's what this chord is. Okay, and then the next to last chord in this case is going to be your B minor 7 flat 5, and then you're back to your C chord. So there's a couple of bar chords in there, the D minor, and then we have the A minor. Actually, right here. Sorry, 2nd fret. So that's the idea. 5th fret on the A string is A. So when you do the E minor shape, A minor is the resulting chord. So those are the only two bar chords that we have. Typically in C major, you don't have any bar chords if you take the capo away. So for those who want to get more adventurous and start to do more bar chords, this will afford you that opportunity to do some bar chords, not a lot. So the D minor being the exception and the A minor. Okay. So I'll do a lesson on bar chords at some point. So anyway, that's the deal. That's the whole of the installation of this next part of functional music theory on guitar. Okay. And a lot of fun can be had, like I mentioned. So give yourself a good amount of time on it. Check out the other parts. I'll include a couple of links to those parts at the end of this video. I'll link part 4 in so you can see that one, and also the capo lesson using the C, F, and G chords. Okay, so that will be the next lesson to look to and click on. And if you like what you see here, feel free to like and subscribe. And many have subscribed actually over the past week or so. And I thank you for that. Thank you for being here. I hope you enjoy the videos, and hopefully you get some good benefit out of it, and you can write your songs and do all kinds of good stuff with it. All right. Good luck to you, and we'll see you on the next video. See ya.